St. Charles City Police Chief Ray Jenks, along with several of his officers who were directly involved as first responders the evening of this tragic event. To my right are my trial team. Both sides were instrumental in this being about as smooth and clean of a trial as you could ever hope for. The first thing I'd like to acknowledge is that when we walked out of that courtroom, there was a heavy sense on both sides. First of all, we acknowledge the nearly 4 years of suffering from the families of the victims, as 3 generations were wiped out within a matter of minutes. The family's memories live on, no doubt. It was a trying 4 years for the family. It was a trying 3 weeks, to say the least. In addition, it was eye-opening to me. I was not surprised by this, but it was nonetheless eye-opening. The impact that this case still continues to have on these gentlemen over here and members of their department, who were all part of the crime scene that evening as well as the subsequent investigation. This is a human story. It's a human tragedy. Specifically, as you know by now, the jury just returned 4 death sentences for each of the 4 victims, for which he was found guilty just last week in the guilt phase of the trial. We talked about this briefly as we just sort of let it all sink in. It's a surreal feeling. Nobody likes to be here. We don't take any pleasure out of being here. On the flip side, we are satisfied. We feel like justice has been served. The death penalty is a remedy that's rarely sought in this state. If we believe that we've got a murder that is the worst of the worst, that has what we call aggravating factors, then we have the opportunity to present that question to the jury and let them decide. I happen to think that's the right way to do it. Regardless of one's personal feelings about the death penalty, the jury, in certain circumstances, should have the right to hear all the evidence and make the decision. And that's what they did today. I'll turn it over briefly to Chief Jenks for him to say a few words.
I'd just like to thank the officers that work for St. Charles City Police Department. They put a lot of phenomenal work into this case. I'd also like to thank the prosecutor's office for all of their work and commitment to this case. And then also that night when this happened, it wasn't just my department that worked on this. It was every single department in this county sent manpower to assist us with this. We had over 160 investigators, law enforcement officers involved in this incident that night, and it was tremendous work by all of them. To echo what Tim said, we're the same way. We feel like justice has been served, and we hope this brings a little bit of closure and peace for the family and the victims of this incident, not just but also our officers that were deeply affected by it. So we appreciate all the hard work by everyone involved.
All right, at this point, we'll entertain any questions that you may have.
What's next after this? A little bit about they may appeal, but really what's the next route for all of this?
Sure, right now what we have, we just have the recommendation from the jury for a sentence of death on all 4 counts. Formal sentencing will take place in November, I believe November 3rd. November 3rd. Judge Fagris will formally impose the sentence. After that, assuming, I shouldn't assume anything, in the event that the judge concurs with the jury and does in fact impose the death penalty, there will be an automatic appeal to the state Supreme Court. There will be several other appellate steps along the way. So this is a huge step, the biggest step, but only a first step in what's going to be a long process.
What did you think of the defense's argument that he had a personality disorder, he's not really a killer? It seemed like kind of an unusual tack to take. How did that strike the prosecution?
At this point, I'm able to give you my opinion, and I believe it backfired. I believe it was disingenuous. I believe it was not true. I believe, as they proved for the better part of 3 weeks, it was all part of a plan of self-preservation. So I don't think it went over very well, and obviously the jury didn't buy it either.
Can you talk about the body-worn cameras, the decision to show that, and how graphic that was, reopening wounds for some?
Yes. To my left are a few of the gentlemen whose body cameras captured the footage in the initial moments of the crime scene. It was appalling for me to have to watch it the first time. It was appalling for our team to have to watch it dozens upon dozens of times. It was even worse for these guys to have to live through it. Having said that, it is in this case the best evidence of what the crime scene looked like, what the aftermath of this killer caused. And it was for us a great way to really drive home the emotions behind the actions. And Coach, or Chief, if you'd like to say some words on body cams, please feel free.
So it took some time for us when we reviewed them initially, and then preparing for this trial. That is one of the more difficult things that we had to do, is sitting through with the officers and going through it. We had several officers that it took some time for them to go back through it and review it again, because of the effect it does have with you. It does last. It doesn't go anywhere. And every time you reopen that wound, it's like going through it all over again. So it was very difficult.
Considering how horrible the video was and the crime, what would you say? There was a protester out here a little while ago saying, you know, the death penalty is wrong, that you shouldn't have it, it doesn't bring back victims, that kind of thing.
I'd say everybody's entitled to their opinion. I think probably you poll 10 people, you're going to get 5 different answers as to what the right thing is. I think our system is the right way to do it, and that is after a jury of one's peers has seen and heard all the evidence, has seen and heard all the evidence of any aggravating or mitigating factors, and once they can make the determination, I could live with their decision regardless of what it was.
And what do you, last question for me, what do you think was aggravating of note in this case that made this a bona fide death penalty case?
I think it was a clear wanton disregard for human life. It was vile. The crime scene was just, it spoke for itself. To commit these murders within a matter of moments, but we could clearly establish that there was plenty of time for cool reflection between each pull of that trigger. To me, those are the things that stood out to us, and I think ultimately to the jury as well.
You mentioned at the beginning that this is a very clean trial, but you also mentioned that there are appellate things that are likely to happen and kind of slow it down, even if the judge does ultimately sentence him to death. I'm curious, how confident are you that this is going to stand up to appellate appeals?
Sure, that's a fair question. Because there's so many levels of appeals that we anticipate this case may follow, you never know, because once it leaves the hands of the state court, it does go to the federal courts and ultimately could go to the United States Supreme Court. But having said that, I'm very confident that our team, and I say that collectively, the team, first of all, on the investigative side, did things about as well as you could ever expect an investigation of this magnitude to be done. Secondarily, once they handed it off to our team, the way they tried the case, again, it went about as well as we could ever hope. And that's all we can control. Anything else? Okay, thank you very much.
Let me just fix where they